One of the questions that I get from subscribers relates to polybagged comics and whether a comic should be stored in a polybag or if that comic should actually be removed from the polybag. So what I decided to do today was to open up a couple of copies of Superman issue number 75 from the 100K collection. This is one of those comics from the 90s that has a little bit of a bad reputation. There were 6 million copies of this specific comic sold, and that's part of the reason why it has a bad reputation. But right away, what you will notice is that this comic has a defect on it. And part of the reason why comics that are polybagged, especially those from the 90s, have defects is because of the things that they are bundled with. In the case of Superman 75, there was a memorial poster, a set of commemorative stamps, an obituary from the Daily Planet, and also a trading card. And all of these materials were sealed inside of this polybag with no backer. And that's kind of sort of important. But to be honest with you, I've seen comics that have been polybagged with backing boards and there still be defects present on a comic. So let's take a closer look at this comic. And again, what I'm trying to do here is to use the light to show me the defects that are present. And there is a very large, essentially subscription crease that runs from the top of the book all the way to the bottom, along with a couple of spine ticks as well on the left side. Maybe there's hope for the back side of this comic as I turn it over to get a good look at it, and unfortunately not. There are defects present there as well. With a little bit of a dud on the first copy, I decided to open up a second copy, still hopeful that this second copy might look a little better than the first. And again, as you look at the book, you can see the same crease running from the top of the book all the way down to the bottom, and the back side also has a series of defects because of the commemorative card and some of the other materials that were bound with this book. So I decided to shift gears just a little bit here and open up a polybagged comic that had been sealed with a backing board by the owner. Maybe my luck would be a little bit better here. So I went ahead and cut this one open, and the same thing, the exact same crease running from top to bottom. What they did with this issue is they actually put an armband inside of the book, and that's part of the reason for that crease that runs from top to bottom. In some of the other copies that I opened up, they actually shifted the position of that armband to the middle of the book, and the result was the same. It was still that same subscription crease. But you can also see other defects present on this book, again, from being bundled with so many different materials. As I opened up these other copies, the result was the same. If you purchase a comic that comes in a polybag, my recommendation would be to remove that comic from that polybag, inspect that comic, and then pair it with an acid-free backing board, place it into a polybag, and store it like you normally would. If you want to keep the poly that it came sealed in and any other materials that it might have been bundled with, you can place those items in a separate polybag with a backing board and store it in your collection as well. So I want to offer up a couple of other tidbits that folks may find helpful. One of the things that I've also seen with sealed polybags is that the seam of the polybag itself will actually introduce imperfections into the comic. The seam will essentially create an impression on the back side of the cover. Sometimes this impression can be removed with a clean or a press, but that isn't always the case. Additionally, people will make the assumption that because a comic is polybagged, that comic is protected. And as we've shown here in the video, that is not the case. But one of the challenges is with those comics that come with a backing board inserted into that sealed polybag, there are imperfections that can be introduced. One of the most notable are corner dings. So even if you have a comic that has a backing board inside of that polybag where it came from the printer that way, there is still the possibility that there are imperfections. And part of the reason for that is the backing board that they tend to use is not a very sturdy one. And so it allows the comic to bend, and it also can allow for those corner impacts. The last thought that I have here is that if you do want to maintain a comic in a sealed polybag, what you can always do is buy multiple copies of that same comic. Open one, store it the normal way, and then keep one in the polybag if you want to maintain how it originally came. Hopefully you all found this video helpful. Hopefully it answers some questions that people have about whether they should store their comics in the sealed polybag or not. As always, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Until next time.